I saw Toy Story 4 in theaters back in 2019, I remember something that really stuck with me. It was a 10 in the morning Tuesday showing, and somehow it was absolutely packed. It was so full that I ended up sitting in the dreaded front row seats where you're looking straight up at the screen. As uncomfortable as that was, I also remember all the kids walking into the theater. They were excited, talking about Woody and Buzz, and just thrilled to be seeing another Toy Story movie. Now, that was 7 years ago. Those same kids who were probably around 5 to 8 years old back then are teenagers now. A lot of them are reaching the age where smartphones, tablets, social media, and AI are just a normal part of everyday life. So, on paper, making a Toy Story movie that's about technology instead of simply another adventure with the toys actually, to some degree, does make sense. The franchise has always reflected childhood at different stages, so naturally, the next thing to explore would be how technology changes the way kids play. The real question is, does the movie actually do enough with the idea to justify its existence? Does it further the characters? My feelings are a little bit complex. Overall, I'm leaning positive, but it doesn't quite reach the emotional highs of the first 3 films. Now, I can definitely understand the argument that the sequel was worth making because Jessie is essentially the main character this time around. Her story revolves around finally confronting and resolving the abandonment she struggled with ever since Toy Story 2. That's a character arc that's been sort of unresolved for decades, so giving her that closure feels earned. At the same time, I didn't exactly walk away from the movie with the same profound feeling I had after the first 3 films. Those movies all felt like they had something universally meaningful to say about childhood, growing up, loyalty, and eventually moving on. The movie has those themes too, but I don't think it explored them quite as deeply. The film was directed by Andrew Stanton, who also directed Finding Nemo. You can definitely feel some of his influence here. Much like Finding Nemo, this movie is really about parents, or in this case toys, learning that eventually kids grow up, become more independent, and don't need you in the same way anymore. It's a sweet message. The only issue is, Toy Story has kind of already explored that. Toy Story 2 dealt with accepting change. Toy Story 3 was almost entirely about letting go, and Toy Story 4 was also about Woody and needing to let Andy go. So, while the message still works emotionally, it does feel a little repetitive compared to what came before, but though it's not quite a straight-up rehash, it does feel a little familiar. One thing I was actually worried about going into the movie was that it was just going to rehash that Toy Story Christmas special, and if you've seen that, you'll remember its basic message was essentially kids spend too much time playing with their video games instead of using their imagination with toys. And it definitely touches on that same idea. Kids are increasingly distracted by technology and addicted to it. Traditional imaginative play isn't really as common as it used to be. Thankfully, it doesn't feel like they're simply repeating it. Instead, the movie explores how to fit toys into this new technological world rather than just saying that technology is bad. That's a much more interesting angle. One thing I genuinely loved was the animation. The filmmakers came up with a really creative way to visually represent how different children imagine their adventures. When Bonnie is playing, everything has a soft watercolor-inspired style that reflects her imagination. Another child imagines adventures in an entirely different visual style. It's a clever reminder that even though kids play differently, imagination still exists. It just looks different depending on who's imagining it. That creativity extends just beyond the visuals. The movie also has something I feel Pixar's been missing for several years now: art. Since about 2021, with maybe the exception of Inside Out 2, Pixar has felt safe. Not bad, at least most of the time, just safe. I didn't really feel much after watching Luca, Lightyear, Turning Red, Elemental, or Elio. They all had enjoyable moments, except for Turning Red, but emotionally they didn't really stay with me. This movie actually does. It isn't perfect, but it feels like Pixar is trying again. It feels like old school Pixar. There's also a fun subplot involving an army of newer generation Buzz Lightyear toys, and where that storyline eventually goes reminding me quite a bit of the film Small Soldiers. It's probably one of the more entertaining parts of the movie, and gives the Buzz Lightyear something fun to do without stealing the spotlight from Jessie. Now, that's not to say that everything about the film works. There are definitely some plot conveniences. For example, one character becomes important to the story, just happens to live right near Bonnie. Like, I can accept Bonnie living relatively close to Andy since they established they're from the same general area, but this other character just conveniently being nearby as well, that's a bit of a stretch and just feels there to move the plot along. The movie also introduces a character named Lilypad, who's basically a children's version of an iPad, and her abilities are kind of far-fetched. Like, she can connect to virtually any electronic device. Printers, Roombas, other smart home devices, pretty much anything with a computer inside it, so why would a children's educational toy be programmed to hack into every piece of technology in the house? It makes for some entertaining scenes, but it does add some stakes to the movie, but if you stop and think about it, it also raises a few questions. Maybe the movie is supposed to be a cautionary tale about Alexa more than anything, but at the same time, the message also does feel a little hypocritical, because Pixar was, after all, partially founded by Steve Jobs. And let's be honest, about a month after the movie leaves theaters, Disney is almost certainly going to put ads in everybody's face about how you can stream it now on Disney+. Probably on the very phones and tablets the movie spends time warning about. So there is a little bit of irony and hypocrisy there. One thing longtime fans will probably appreciate is the filmmakers clearly heard the criticism surrounding the 2022 Lightyear movie. One of the biggest complaints about that movie was what they did with Zurg. Without spoiling anything, the movie wisely walks that back. They make a point of emphasizing the more traditional version of the character multiple times, and it honestly feels like Pixar acknowledging their mistakes. Overall, where do I land? I still think it's the weakest of the main 5 Toy Story films, but then again, saying it's the weakest isn't even that big of a criticism. It's still funny, it's still heartfelt, it still has emotional moments that work, Jessie gets a meaningful character arc, and it does what all great Pixar films do, where parents will probably take away just as much from the story as the younger viewers. And even though it's a few plot conveniences and some repeated themes, I still walked out with a smile on my face fully satisfied. Now, I don't think it reaches the greatness of the original trilogy, and it's not quite as memorable as even Toy Story 4 was, but it's nowhere near a massive step down I was worried it might be. It's simply another good Toy Story movie, just not a great one. So for me, it earns a B, an 8 out of 10, or about 4 out of 5 stars, and for point of reference, the other 4 Toy Story movies, I gave A's. So the fact that this went from an A to a B, still pretty solid. It's still worth seeing. Also, stick around after the movie ends. There's a mid-credits scene that may or may not be teasing something for the future. There's one final little joke just before the end of the end credits, like right after the scrolling end credits. It's not a post-credits scene, but it's kind of a throwback to a joke at the end. It's not essential, but it is a fun callback to an earlier joke, and it got a nice laugh out of me. So yeah, it's definitely worth seeing. Go take your family. There wasn't anything objectionable that made me cringe. I don't know why it's PG. I mean, there is some potty humor regarding like a device that's made for toilet training, and there's a little bit of that, but it wasn't too over the top. I still really enjoyed it. I still let a kid watch it. In my mind, it's a G-rated movie. It's perfect for the kids and the adults. It's definitely classic Pixar, though it is a little bit repetitive.